welcome to week 9, I believe it is, of GLIAC Weekly. Tony, we've only got a few more weeks of the regular season left here, my guy.
I know, man. It always goes by on a blur. I always marvel at that. When I used to write the column, that was one of the things I would always, jabber on like a monkey in a tree, as Forrest Gump would say. Just about how fast these seasons go, man. They are a blink of an eye, no doubt about it.
I know it. I felt like it was just a little while ago. I was sitting at Pitt State watching Ferris, and now all of a sudden we're here. But
right.
Let's go ahead, buddy, and kind of take a look at what we had this last week. Obviously, we'll be talking about Grand Valley Ferris State a fair amount on this show, and we're gonna go ahead and have some things that we didn't have on our Sunday night show. We're gonna have some interviews with players, with coaches, and so forth. Get a little bit more, of an angle with that, with some of that. But we're also going to have some games that we're going to talk about, including the upset alert that I almost had, Tony, and didn't.
Yeah.
You and Sandy were giving me the business, and I almost pulled that off, man.
No, don't play this on my feet. I did not give you any business about that. I understood exactly where you were coming from.
Yeah. But, we just have 4 games on the slate, and we'll go ahead and dig on in. But naturally, the first game that we're going to go ahead and be taking a look at is going to be Ferris State and Grand Valley. Contest that you went to, Tony. But as we take a look here, if we're going to be kind of concise with this was a ball game that I felt that Ferris State was looking like the better team in the first half. They were up 6-0 with about a little less than a minute left. Then all of a sudden, Trinidad Chambliss kind of starts taking over. Big score. Now all of a sudden it's 13-0 at half. Avery Moore dinged up, didn't finish the game. Didn't come in the second half. Then they're going through this quarterback situation, and that's never going to be fruitful when you're facing a top 5 team in the country. And Ferris State just kind of went to business in that second half. That's kind of how I saw it. What was kind of you're a few days after having been at the game.
Yeah.
What other thoughts do you have having soaked it in person?
No, I actually really haven't deviated a lot from what I thought even that evening, and as I worked through looking at the tape again on Sunday. And that's that, Ferris came in with a really solid game plan that they executed the daylights out of. They played mistake-free football, whereas Grand Valley made plenty of mistakes. Even you're talking about Chambliss's touchdown to close out the first half. That's set up by an interception that Grand Valley threw to basically only have a 1-play possession with about 3 minutes to go in the half. So, that's just it. They take over that possession with about 3 minutes to go in the half, and it's 6-0. And even if they could have scratched something out of that drive, and maybe even gotten it to 6-3, or even, who knows, taken one in and gone into the half with a lead, then that touchdown that they get on the first drive of the second half, changes the complexion of the game maybe a little bit. But, at the end of the day, I think you're right. Ferris State looked like the team that was better prepared, and they played like it. And Grand Valley kind of got in its own way throughout that first half. And then once they were, down to their third-string quarterback in the second half, you can't play a team like Ferris State not at full strength, especially at the most important position on the field. So, at that point, the game became a lot less competitive instantaneously, and it's not the fault of the kids or anything. That's what it is. That's how that works. So, and I think if the same thing had happened to Chambliss, that's what would have happened
totally.
To Ferris.
And you know what? Ferris put them away in the second half like a good team is supposed to.
You got it.
And we're going to go ahead. We're going to watch for highlights, and then we're going to go ahead and have some coach interviews, player interviews afterwards. So I'll go ahead and kind of run through a little bit of this, what we have. We talked about Trinidad Chambliss, being able to go ahead and get loose in this game. He had a handful of plays that became chunk yards or better. This was, I thought, a very even first half. Grand Valley kind of slowed themselves down with some turnovers. Then at the same time, Ferris right here able to get to the quarterback, and this was just a real feeling out process to me, the viewer watching this. And Grand Valley had their moments of getting things cooking in that first half.
Well, sure.
But they just weren't able to cash in. And then as the first half kind of moved on, they play a style where Avery Moore is a big piece of what they do offensively. And, he gets dinged up, and then this was the play that I thought broke it all wide open.
Yep.
Because after I found out as a viewer that Avery Moore was not going to play the second half, I realized Cody Tierney does a great job taking this one in. But as a viewer, I had no intentions that thoughts that this game was going to be close in the second half. And I kind of had moved it back to one of my extra games I was watching at that point, if I'm going to be honest. Ferris State with a huge response here on a kick return. A little bit, they're able to score on this. They get a block punt, score again. And this is where, the offensive line of Ferris, I thought, was kind of an underrated piece in this, because they have not really been able to have their way with Grand Valley up front and be able to run on them like they were in this game. Correct. In a little bit of time.
Yep.
And that was the thing that I think we really didn't expect. I thought for sure that they would force Ferris to have to pass. And when Ferris then gets the momentum and starts hitting plays like this, and then you've got an athlete like Trinidad is, that's Ferris they're a different defend with how they're doing things right there. With Trinidad, and frankly, just kind of the way he's got a different gear than a Malik Mitchell of the past, and Gulker and guys like that. So he creates a different problem, and I walked away thinking, you know what? It would be interesting if these teams met in the playoffs. Not because I want to see that, because I absolutely don't want to see that, because I want to see these teams on different ends of the bracket.
Yes.
And I want to see if they meet at the end.
Yes.
I'm tired of them playing in the first round.
Yes.
And I live in South Dakota, and I'm tired of it. Now that said, I would be interested to see how Grand Valley would defend this the second time around, because I felt in terms of the chess match that Nice won this one.
Yeah, and I here's the thing, is that's what Nice is trying to do, is be just that one step ahead of anybody that he plays against. And, it's funny, he at GLIAC Media Day called out Grand Valley's defensive coordinator, Jim Lewis, by name, as somebody who had, really given him, fits, I suppose, is kind of what he was saying.
Oh, he has.
I don't remember his exact verbiage, but, and this was, if you really looked at how Ferris approached this game, their offense hasn't looked exactly like that all year. In fact, this was much more run-centric and much more power run than a lot of the kind of pass-happy end of things that they've been doing. And I found it interesting, that Sandy last week on the show talked so much about how they want to run first. And traditionally they always have, but they really had been throwing the ball a little bit more this year. And this game, they were, we talked about this on Sunday. Chambliss had 19 pass attempts. Now, part of that is because the game script didn't warrant him to throw any more than that. But nevertheless, if you look at how they moved the ball, particularly in the first half, they did a lot of damage, both with Cannon Kanzer and with Chambliss. And, again, credit to Grand Valley that they were able to bow their necks a little bit, to coin your phrase, and get some stops. Ferris did punt a couple of times in the first half, and then got held to a couple of field goals. And it was that late turnover, which, was a heck of a play by Ferris's corner that made that pick. His name's escaping me, but it was a real nice play on his part. And, at that point, Ferris cashed in on it. And you're right. Once it got to that point, I don't think anybody in the crowd knew that Moore wasn't going to be available in the second half, but it certainly felt like if it could have gone to the half at 6-0 and Grand Valley gets the ball to start the second half and they clean up the mistakes, it would have been a different ball game. And it's two scores and then you lose your quarterbacks, and it just became a lot less interesting after that point.
Yeah, I mean, just because of Ferris, there was blood in the water, and they knew it, and they took advantage of that,
for sure.
and took care of business. Now we're going to go ahead.
Any team that's in this caliber, would do that for sure.
Now our roving reporter Sandy Golston. No, he actually works for Ferris. We just pretend like he works for us. And Tony,
we don't even tell him.
Exactly. He's finding this out. He's going to find this out when this airs.
Right.
But we're going to go ahead and play. He got a little bit of video after the game with Coach Anise and with Trinidad Chambliss. We'll play that, and we'll come right back here, Tony.
You look pretty calm right now for a guy who's just had a pretty fantastic win. What are your initial thoughts about this win?
Well, yeah, great win. I thought that all sides of the ball, you can go to the defense and few interceptions, fumble recovery. You can go to the offense and basically, churning the clock and running the ball effectively against a great defensive run stopping team. And then special teams, obviously Reek's, they score a touchdown, their only touchdown, and Reek takes it back almost to the house, and then Housey blocks a punt. So huge plays and great team win. As good a team win as I can remember in a long time.
How sweet was this game?
Oh, it's amazing. I'm so proud of our team. I'm so proud of how hard our guys played, man. It was just an unbelievable atmosphere. I'm so happy that we got the win.
And what about you? Because a lot of people were saying, man, how is Trinidad going to adjust to playing in front of this atmosphere? But you played in front of this atmosphere earlier at Pittsburgh State, and I know you didn't have the performance that you wanted. How sweet did it come back and be able to have this game in this atmosphere?
Yeah, obviously after week 0 game versus against Pitt State, I was pretty devastated and I was pretty down on myself. I didn't think I played as well as I can, and I feel like I let my team down week 0, and I was pretty hard on myself. So I'm so happy that we got the win, and it was a mind and thought of mine that I got to get this win versus Grand Valley and prove to myself and prove to the team that I can get a big time win against a big time team. So,
now considering the fact I was watching the clip there, Tony, and Ferris has big games remaining with Saginaw and with Davenport. I think we're going to have our roving reporter get us some more good audio like that.
Yeah, maybe.
We're gonna have to talk to him about that. Maybe we'll get him a mic that says D2 football on it. But
he's better at this than you and I are, man.
I know. Well,
maybe we should be scared for our gigs.
I'm not sure the bar's that high, but
valid point.
I thought some interesting maturity there by Trinidad Chambliss, kind of looking at taking ownership of how things went early in the season at the Pitt game and kind of how his feelings were about that. And really, I know that he had a ton of family there and things like that for this game. And, kind of really had an outstanding performance for them. And now, as you look at this, he's a different type of weapon to have to stop with Ferris than what they've been doing before. They've been all kinds of different things offensively. And now they got a guy who can go make plays with his feet with a turbo boost, and the variety of things they're doing offensively. I feel like I almost don't know what to expect from them going forward now, buddy.
Yeah, you could surmise that they might be a little less predictable than they were because when Gulker was in, while he would throw it occasionally, you kind of knew they were going to run the football.
Yeah.
It starts to look a little bit more like maybe back to a Reggie Bell or a J. Rue Campbell that maybe was a little bit more of that take every snap type of guy. And yet they would still have him throw the ball downfield when they needed to. So, it's and we talked about this, I think, on a couple of different shows, and you and I have even had off camera conversations just about how as unfortunate as losing a player like a Carson Gulker is, and you feel horrible for him. When you get pushed into this type of scenario like Chambliss has, it becomes his team almost immediately, and you got to see what is he going to do with it. And obviously, so far, he's passed every test and done really well. And so you give credit to the kid for putting in the work and for the team rallying around him. And he's definitely become the guy for them, and it's paying dividends for them so far.
Well, and Carson Gulker, the one thing I do notice is when they get inside the 10, it's a different. They have to do things a little differently.
Yeah.
Because
That's
what they
straight
were
power.
able to, yeah, what they were able to do with him before. I mean, let's be real frank. When he was a redshirt freshman, and they would run his tush push power, whatever you want to call it, that was wild. I mean, sometimes they were moving 5 yards. A pile was moving downfield.
Yep.
I mean, it was just crazy the way they could run that. So I'm assuming they're going to try and still find a way to have some type of version of that. But man, the way he was able to run it with his size and strength, he'll be welcome to come back whenever that is.
I have no doubt.
Now let's go ahead and listen to Coach Wooster a little bit in his post game, and then we'll go right from there. We're going to go to Ian Kennelly, defensive back for Grand Valley, who is with Coach there.
Just some things that we have prided ourselves, done an awesome job all year with. We didn't do today. Assessment of the football, taking care of the football offensively, turned it over. Feel really good about the game plan, moving the ball up and down the field a little bit. First series, we get a false start, and then we get a kind of a bobble snap, puts us behind the sticks. Miss a field goal, and then I think the next two offensive series we turn the ball over. And those are things that we have not done this year. Really dominated field position through some special teams throughout this year. We didn't do that today. Got a block punt, got a huge kickoff return that put our defense in a really bad spot. And, you look at the start to this football game defensively, giving up a couple field goals, and until very late in that football game after turnovers, they got their touchdown. So, as I look at it, just things that we pride ourselves on, things that we work.
Coach, can you tell us the status of both Avery and Ike, because they both had injuries that came out of the game?
I'll go meet with our athletic training staff, and we're very precautionary at this point, but just didn't want to put guys in a position to, any further. But that'll be a conversation we have with our sports medicine staff, Jim Winkler, and, make those decisions moving forward.
I think, when they get out into that empty look, you lose a guy in the box. And then, just didn't really expect them to do that coming into the game. Ran the ball 41 times, I see here. And that's the nature of playing these guys as much as we do. Coach Anise knows Coach Lewis and likewise. So it's kind of a chess match between those two guys, game plan-wise. And, we expected maybe some of that, but we didn't expect them to come out in that every play. So, tip our hat to them, and, they were just better today.
Yeah, and Tony, this is a lot of the stuff that we kind of were referring to. And,
Yep.
Coach makes mention there of kind of what's next. Because I think when you look past the result here and you go, we know what Ferris looks like going forward. What's Grand Valley look like going forward with this whole situation with the quarterback thing? Well, let's be real honest. If you take a look at their schedule the next 3 weeks, we got Wayne State, we got Michigan Tech, and we've got Roosevelt.
Yep.
Now, I think you can make a case that Michigan Tech, with how they run their offense, is a team that could give them some problems. But if Grand Valley plays the way we would expect Grand Valley to play, those other two games, they should win by a few scores. And this now comes into, how long does it kind of take to put Humpty Dumpty back together? Because, because this team's going to need Avery more for the playoffs. I mean, if they're going to try and be the team that they think they can be, in my opinion. And the playoffs aren't that far away at this point. So, you need a two, or, your number two probably to come on up and get some quality work, get some experience, no different than Trinidad Chambliss got, for Ferris in that moment. And, on the other side, Ian Kennelly, I thought, pointed out some things. Like you could tell when he looked at the stat sheet and he saw how many times Ferris ran, he was like, what? Because it wasn't what they were expecting.
Right. And we talked about that before we went into that segment, right? That's exactly what Ferris was looking to do, was to try and to come out and do something a little bit unexpected. And, there's a certain risk to it too. When you look at how Grand Valley's defended the run this year, for Ferris to go out and execute and be that committed to it and do that well with it, there's a risk there, because if it doesn't work out and Grand Valley's making you go 3 and out every possession, then it's a problem. So again, I mean, that's and same as what Kennelly said. I mean, that when you see a team take a risk like that and have it work out, you tip your cap to them, because they got prepared and nailed it.
Yeah, we were expecting fastball and they threw us a curve. So
so that's part of why they play the games, man.
Absolutely. Well, moving on to the rest of the league, because let's be honest, that's the biggest regular season game in Division II every year, and we need to give it that kind of attention.
Sure.
As we kind of look at the other games that we have, Michigan Tech, nice rebound game here. Northern Michigan. Right now they're playing a ball game, but they're not in a ball game, if you know what I mean. So they got to find a way here to scratch one, and they still got a few weeks left. But what takeaways did you have from this game, buddy?
Well, nothing of particular note, from the standpoint that this is pretty much in line with how we talked about we thought it would go last week. It was good to see Northern actually get some completions in this game and at least try to put a little bit of balance to that offense.
Right.
They'd gone back-to-back games without completing a pass, so they at least did a little bit there. And Aiden Horton even managed to throw a touchdown pass in this game, so that's cool. The funny thing is if you really look at it, though, I mean, this is one thing that I think concerns me about Michigan Tech in total, is that offense really still didn't move the ball all that much. I mean, Alex Freeze, he had 221 yards. He hit a few deep shots, but I mean, he did that on 11 completions. That's not particularly efficient when you stop and look at it. And did have a couple of the giveaways there. And this really was more about how well Tech's defense played, which, when you're playing a one-dimensional team, that gets a little bit easier. But in a rivalry game, for Michigan Tech to post 12 tackles for loss and 3 sacks, I mean, that usually speaks to preparedness, where they had a really good feel for what Northern was going to try and do. They were ready for it, and they were able to stop it up. So, there wasn't anything particularly interesting that happened in this one, just from the standpoint that we knew Tech was going to have Northern overmatched, particularly at home, particularly in a rivalry game. And I think this one makes, it's 13 or 14, it might even be 15 straight Miners Cups now that Tech has won.
Wow.
It's been a long time since Northern's gone home with that thing. So, you feel bad for the Cats being on that losing streak like that, and you really hope they're going to find one sometime soon. But I think we both had our suspicions that this wasn't going to be the spot.
Right. Well, as we kind of move down through the other games, Saginaw Valley, Wayne State, this game, it kind of starts off a little slow for Saginaw, and then they kind of get things moving here and are scoring points every quarter. That's always kind of my concern with Saginaw, is are they going to be getting enough points to separate themselves in games like this?
Yeah.
And they clearly did in this one. And, you go ahead and you take a look at Terrence Brown, almost 100 yards, 3 scores, and their defense was every bit as good as advertised.
Yeah, and Saginaw had another back that was actually had more yards than Brown did. I had it all teed up and I don't remember his name. I put Brown on that one because he had the 3 scores.
Sure.
In this one, we've talked in the past a little bit about how when you play Grand Valley and when you play Ferris, one of the things that happens is those teams tend to not fare very well. Michael Jamerson. There we go.
Almost like
yards.
A physical hangover, right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And there's somebody's done the math on that before, where teams after playing those two Ferris and Grand Valley, the win percentage the week after is only it's somewhere around 200. It's not very good. So for Saginaw, especially after how emotional and how disappointed they were to not find a way to pull that one out, you can kind of understand that they'd come out a little bit flat. And let's face it, Wayne's defense, usually in the early going of games, is not the easiest to move the football against. So, to have this one be a little bit slow in the early going, not such a surprise. I think the thing that I liked about it was, Mason McKenzie was highly efficient in this game, far more so than he was over the last couple of weeks. To go 15 to 21, so basically be in that plus 70% in your completion percentage. He hasn't really been there all that often this year, so that's a great result for them. They still ran the ball effectively, and then the defense played like you would expect them to, holding Wayne to 2.9 yards a play. And in Wayne's defense, I think we've talked about how when they've got Champ Edwards in there, you kind of feel like they're going to be able to move the ball, at least with a certain level of effectiveness, just because he's so dynamic, both passing, but then also with his legs and being creative. And they didn't have him in this game. So that, Wayne was kind of behind the eight ball, just at the opening kick, just because they weren't full strength on offense.
Yeah, and not having your one when you're going to play a team with that kind of defense.
Yeah.
We talked about it before. Bad recipe.
Yep.
Oh, here's the disappointing one for me. I was like a bettor who was already spending his money. I thought I had this one, and then I didn't. But Davenport finds a way in a game like this. I think these are the kind of games, though, that give people a little bit of pause about Davenport. Like, the thought is, if you're going to be a playoff team potentially, or try and get in there, are you that much in the weeds with a Roosevelt? So now that said, we know Roosevelt's got some playmakers and some guys who can be electric.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the day, Davenport ends up though having a kick return for a touchdown and having just enough to win this one.
Yeah. And the funny thing is Roosevelt actually even spotted them that field goal that they got at the beginning of the game, because Carson Butke threw a pick on, I think, the second offensive snap. So Davenport was set up with a short field to begin things, and yet still only mustered another 16 points the rest of the way. I mean, so that tells you how competitive Roosevelt is.
Yeah.
Just Davenport at no point really overwhelmed them, even though you kind of think of them as being this, team. Hey, they're 6-2, and they've beaten some good teams, and they've played a couple other good teams pretty close. And I think I'm with you where it's like, okay, if they're going to be a competitive team in the playoffs, you can't be beating one-win teams by a nickel with all your points coming with your difference being behind at the break, right? But that's what happened here, I mean, and the guys that you would expect to make plays for Davenport offensively did. Myron Harris had a nice game. Preston Smith had a real nice touchdown in the first half. But, they also had other opportunities. They had a goal-to-go situation where they went for it, or actually they might have had – I take that back. It might have been a 4th and 2. They were inside Roosevelt's 10 in the second quarter. Couldn't convert, So, I mean, it's like they even had other chances to put more points up and just didn't get it done. So it's like, okay, if you can't do that against teams that are struggling to win more than 1 or 2 games, how on earth are you going to do that against playoff teams? So I agree with you. That is a fair thing to point out. And I know Coach McEwen gets frustrated that his team goes on the road and just ekes out these close results. But I guess the flip side of it is they win them. I mean, they haven't found a way to give one away yet.
They're going to get a chance to, they're going to have some games upcoming with some opponents this week where meddling isn't going to be okay. You're going to have to really take care of some business.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Taking a look at the players of the week, the offensive side of things has become the Trinidad Chambliss Award.
Yeah, it sure seems like it has, doesn't it?
I mean, has it been about half the week so far?
Yeah. What are we've had 8 of them.
It feels like
I think
eight's
he has to have won 4.
I was going to say
this is at least 3 or 4 in a row right now.
Yeah. Now, Jalen Jones for Ferris goes ahead and gets this award here for now. Did he end up getting a pick?
He's the one I couldn't think of earlier in the show that had the real nice pick along the sideline.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was a big play in the game, no doubt about it.
Yep.
Now, how about for our special teamer? Now, is he was he the one who had the kick return?
Yeah. They call him Jetpack.
Yep.
And that's, I think, his 3rd kickoff return for a touchdown already this year, or maybe he's got 2 kickoff returns and a punt return. I'm pretty sure it's at least his 3rd kick return of some kind for a touchdown already this year. So, yeah, I mean, and what's funny is on this particular return, I mean, when you hear a nickname Jetpack, you got to presume he's fast, and he is. But his ability to just kind of wait and see where guys were going to be. I mean, he was running in this one pack of 4 or 5 Roosevelt tacklers and only 1 blocker. And he just kind of was real patient up against the sideline, waiting to see how everything was going to kind of open up. And then once he got a crease, then he turned on the afterburners and ran out of everybody. I mean, it was for as much as he had speed, there was a lot of intuition and reading of blocks and patience that he utilized to actually take it the rest of the way. So it was impressive. I mean, he's definitely a weapon.
Well, they've got some big games upcoming, so it's going to give me a guy to watch, kind of over and above the usual cast of characters there. Now, as we move ahead and take a look, we're going to take a quick look at the league standings. We're far enough along now where it feels like we can kind of take a hard look at this and kind of see how things are shaping up. The coaches poll seemed like preseason, like this is about right. Now Ferris Grand Valley 1-2, and then 3 and 4 are matching up, and as they play this week, spoiler. Mm-hmm. And Michigan Tech's kind of that tweener team that is somewhere between being as good as like a Davenport but being better than the bottom 3.
Correct.
And Roosevelt's the new guy in town. I'll be interested to see by the time we get to the end of the year how many wins they've notched, Tony.
Yeah, same here. And that was the team that everybody had at the bottom.
And I didn't buy into that myself.
I had a hard time with it too, just from the standpoint that, again, it's not like they were coming from a different type of scally ball, and they were winning. They were a winning program,
right
where they were. So it's the idea that they were just going to come in and lie down is not part of the deal.
Right, now, you're used to winning in the culture there.
Sure, and what they were facing week in and week out was not by any stretch what they're running into in this league. But I mean, at the same time, they're proving that they've got a lot of fight in them. Because they may have lost to Davenport, but they fought them the whole way. And we heard Coach Brady a couple weeks ago talk about how they fought them the whole way.
Yeah.
So and even I think Sandy even said the same thing last week about when Ferris took them on. So
exactly.
I'm still a little baffled that they went through that 3-game stretch of their non-league games and didn't find a way to win at least one of those. That Valpo.
Yeah.
I look at that. God, how did they let that one get away?
It feels like if they would have gone through that again, they're scratching a win out of that.
I would think at least one. One.
I would agree. We're going to take a quick snapshot view at our new top 25. There's a few kind of speaking points here. One of them is that Valdosta, who was ranked second, our voters did not bump them on up to number 1, simply because they haven't played a top 50 team, according to Massey. And at the same time, both Pitt State and Ferris played top 5, top 10 type teams. Mm-hmm. And, Pitt State's got the win over Ferris. So naturally, you've got a head-to-head there. And I think this makes a whole lot more sense to me. I got to be really honest. I haven't heard a whole lot from Valdosta folks who have objection to this, because otherwise we're just kind of doing standings and moving teams up when another team loses, with or without merit.
Yeah.
Now Grand Valley, I think the respect for Grand Valley is good enough that they didn't drop all that far. You could flip flop them or Harding depending on which flavor you like better. And I think those two there, I would have them before kind of that next tier, Tony, where we have, the Western Colorados and teams like that.
Sure.
And then I think, if we were kind of move this thing down a week, I think the winner of Davenport and Saginaw is probably going to be knocking on the door there in that bottom line, because they're going to have probably for both of them maybe as good or better win than anything on their resume.
Sure.
And that's going to be a real positive thing for whoever comes away with that.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, Pitt State, Ferris State, Valdosta is my 1, 2, 3, how I voted in my poll as well. I'm not as high on Kutztown, and that's not necessarily a knock against the Bears. I know that
Sure.
they work hard, but that's, Super Region 1 teams like Chuck talked about on Sunday. We've got some things to prove. Grand Valley being at 6 probably seems okay. I mean, obviously, whether they have quarterback play moving forward or not, could change where people vote them. And I will tell you that Saginaw Valley has not left my poll. They were in my poll prior to when they played Grand Valley, and I kept them in after they lost because of the way that they played in that game and the caliber of their defense. If they were to come out with a win against Davenport this week, I can't fathom that they wouldn't be, because they're still going to be in my poll.
Well, and there's going to be more and more teams here where 2 losses becomes a regular thing.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you, and there's going to be some teams that are frankly just holding on. And I'll be real frank. You know what happens when you get ranked in this poll? A lot of times when you're on that bottom line, you're only in there a week.
Yeah.
It's like whatever it is, we're just renting. We're not around.
Well, and sometimes again, I mean, I get that Saginaw has the second loss, and it wasn't a very good loss at that. But at the same time, you're looking at Indianapolis there at 21, and hey, Saginaw beat them.
Sure.
So the idea that they shouldn't be knocking on the door at a minimum, it seems unreasonable to me. And I look at some of those teams down there, and I think to myself, all right, how would Saginaw do against them?
Sure.
I think they'd fare pretty well against that bottom 10. They may not beat them all, but they'd be good games at a minimum.
Well, and that's where I think that you're going to see a little bit of a change in thinking about, okay, 2 losses isn't that big a thing anymore. Because we're far enough into the season. But
some of them too think, like Ferris, a great example. Okay, they had that loss, but that was back in week 0. They're a different team now.
Sure.
Saginaw, same thing. They lost to Northwood, was a week 2, I think. They're a different team now. Teams either get better or they get worse, and I know, at least as a poll voter for myself, I take those sorts of things into account. Like right now, I don't know. I don't think I have Pueblo that high, just because the last few weeks they've been pretty iffy. So
sometimes teams end up being fortunate and kind of move along with the current just by not losing.
Correct.
So yeah. Now, we did have a release that came out Monday, the lovely alphabetical order release that we all look forward to.
Ever intriguing, yeah.
Giving a hard time about. And, I joked around the other day, there apparently is still another dot matrix printer in existence, according to the right side of the page. So as we look at this here, there was, I went ahead and kind of did some of my own math, Tony, and was looking at things as if this was a hot week where we're actually going to see all this stuff. And I had the same 10 teams, which I didn't think this was necessarily a tough measure this week. And we're just going to do a quick snapshot for the teams in gold on the far left side are kind of, if it were to start today, who would be in the playoffs. Now, the only catch to this is Indianapolis at 8 would get in because of earned access.
Correct.
So Emporia State would be dropping out. Now Emporia State's going to be playing Central Oklahoma here in a few weeks, so that's going to essentially be a play-in game.
Yep.
But Tony, I think really what I haven't looked at this. When you look at the record column, it kind of tells the story here, because you have one team that's undefeated, have a whole bunch of teams with 1 loss, and then you got a group there with 2.
Yep.
And those teams with 2 losses, like Saginaw Valley, they're going to need to beat Ferris at the end of this year. And if they do, they got a real shot of getting in here because they're going to have a tiebreak on Ferris, who will also have 2 losses. So we're kind of looking at what are some of the games really that are going to be most significant for GLIAC play going forward. And certainly you see Saginaw there on the 10 line right now. You see Davenport just a few lines down. You can see the importance of that game certainly this week. And, then going forward, don't expect that everything's just going to be chalk from there up at the top. There's going to be some upsets. There always is.
Yep.
But realistically, Tony, I think we're looking at 2 GLIAC teams. We're looking at 2 MIAA teams. We're looking at 2 GAC teams. And we're looking at 1 earned access, Indianapolis. And it's just a matter of who those are in what is a brutally tough super region.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I am so glad that this is the last year of this nonsense. Because it's just, these are all teams you look at all of those top 7 teams and you could make a case that those are teams that could win the whole thing.
Yeah. And
they're all in the same region.
That's just it.
It's just, I get why. I get all the whys, and we've talked about this on the Sunday night show. We talked about it a lot last year. I'm just glad they're finally doing something about it because it's just. And the problem is what they're doing about it is great for the GLIAC and probably going to be okay for the GLVC. The MIAA and the GAC are probably still going to look at that and go, hey, "What are you kidding me?" It's
a Band-Aid. It's not a fix.
It's not a real fix.
Right. But no, we just want to give a quick snapshot for those who are interested, kind of what it looks like other than the alphabetization. This is really what it looks like. Now, these are all my own numbers in terms of what I see.
For sure.
The Inkblot's got his own thing. He and I really don't have things all too much differently, if we're going to be honest.
No, and at this point in the game, I've always been a guy who doesn't even really like to talk too much about what I think is going to happen until we're headed into week 11. Because at this stage of the game, and you've already hit on it, the amount of chaos you're going to see.
Yeah.
Some years it's pretty benign. Other years it is just a madhouse. So I look at this list and I say, Pitt State, when you look at the 2 games they have left against Central and Northwest, okay, they're probably favored in those. Right. Ouachita, they still have the Battle of the Ravine. That's going to be interesting in and of itself. You start moving down from there, you already touched on it. Central Oklahoma and Emporia have to play each other yet, so somebody's going to take a loss. The part that intrigues me the most, just because I'm the GLIAC guy, is you've got 1-loss Ferris State, 2-loss Saginaw Valley, and 2-loss Davenport. Mm-hmm. All 3 of those teams still have to play each other over these last 3 weeks. Right?
Yeah.
So Ferris does not have a cakewalk over these last 3 weeks. And if you look at a Saginaw or a Davenport, if one of those could find a way to stay at 2 losses and knock off Ferris, then all of a sudden Ferris has got a problem because whoever beat him, if they've got the same 2 losses, is going to have a tiebreaker on them. So Ferris can't fall asleep here over any of these last 3 weeks. And frankly, neither can Grand Valley, because then the minute you take that second loss, a spot that you've got that's pretty well sewn up becomes real perilous.
Well, for folks who, like I mentioned earlier, don't want to see Ferris and Grand Valley play in the playoffs any before we need to, if this season ended today, they would not be facing each other because 2, 3, and 4 all get to host.
Yep.
So they would have a different opponent.
Well, and
to me, that would be a breath of fresh air.
Well, sure. And the earliest they could face each other with this setup, if it stayed this way, would be the regional final.
Exactly.
So, and I think, again, I hate to get too far into it. I don't like talking about it. But the one thing that's really intriguing about this is in the past, we've seen it where an MIAA team or a GLIAC team, especially with a really high strength of schedule and a really strong resume, even with a loss, will sit on that one line ahead of a GAC team.
Yeah, I don't think OBU can get too comfy.
I don't think they can. But at the same time, because Ferris and Pitt State have played each other, I wonder if that almost ties them to each other too. To me, this seems like this is a year where if Ouachita runs the table, because they'd be the only unbeaten team in the region, I think somehow the committee will keep them on the one. It's just a gut that I have. I could be way wrong. I don't. But that's just my spidey sense says that as we sit here after week 8.
Well, in that 2-3-4 right now, basically Pitt's beaten Ferris, Ferris beat Grand Valley.
Yep.
And that's about the size of that. Now, as long as though Ferris and Grand Valley both stay in that 2-3-4 range, then they're avoiding playing each other. And for my own selfish viewing purposes, I hope that happens.
Yeah, well, I think that's true for most of
I
us.
would much rather see Tony, Central Oklahoma come to Grand Valley and Harding go to Ferris, and whatever it is, and maybe Indy and Pitt. That's a common matchup because of their distance.
Yeah, I would submit that most of us feel the same way you do, and I would think the only ones who don't are people that live in Searcy and Arkadelphia and Pittsburgh and all right.
Oh man,
all those other guys, are like, yeah, if they can take care of one of each other's for the rest of us instead of us all having to knock those two out, we'll take it. So
a high flying Adam Dorrell team coming on into Grand Valley would be a fun new matchup. But now we're doing fantasy booking. We'll move on. We'll move on.
Yep, exactly.
Let's get to our slate of games. And we've got, as we've talked about enough here, Davenport, Saginaw. We've got Ferris, Northern Michigan. Ooh, that one, that's a tough one.
We're not going to spend a lot of time on that one.
No, that was. They might have a running clock in the second half of that one, but then Michigan Tech, Roosevelt. Ooh, they're. I'm going to be tempted again. I'm going to be tempted.
For you to notice that one.
I'm going to be tempted. And then Wayne State and Grand Valley. So let's go ahead and move into game 1. Ferris State, Northern Michigan. This is going to be a one-sided game. Ferris State is probably going to get a chance to get some of their second guys, whether it's quarterback or otherwise, some great game reps. And that's about the size of that. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I'm always sensitive to. I hate to be disrespectful to the guys at Northern, but this has got Trin Chambliss either playing a half, if that.
Yeah.
And then Coach Anise is trying to see what he can do to get reps for some other guys at quarterback, so that they feel like they've got someone that can step in should they need it. So the idea that this one's going to be competitive just seems like a stretch.
Well, this isn't us taking shots either. This is the reality of the situation right now.
Yep.
Now, our next game up, Michigan Tech, who we still think is not quite back to how they've been just yet.
This has got a high interesting meter, Witt. High interesting meter.
Well, Tony, I'm going to let you offer your thoughts and picks first, and I'm gonna play off that.
When you watch Roosevelt play, and when they play defense, and especially when they start getting narrower thirds to defend, they're tougher than you think they are. I know 27 points a game kind of seems like a lot, but this if I'm Michigan Tech, I'm on upset alert in this game. This game. I still think Tech is the better team. I still think that Tech should be able to throw the ball against Roosevelt pretty effectively, even though Davenport really had fits and starts with that last week. Davenport was able to control that game and win it because they got Myron Harris going in the second half.
Right.
And that's the piece of this that I don't trust Michigan Tech to be able to establish that ground game and get it going. I Tech's the better team, but man, I'm telling you, I'll pick the Huskies, but this is upset alert all day. If Roosevelt scratches this one out, it will not surprise me at all.
You know what? I thought to myself, No. When I would start going through my thoughts about Michigan Tech and where I wanted to go with this, I would end up saying to myself, I really want to take Roosevelt in the upset. So screw it. I'm just going to skip all that other stuff and just take Roosevelt in the
Okay.
upset.
Yeah.
Coach, I'm not trying to put any pressure on you here, but
Right.
you might have let me down last week with a big pick I made. We're going to need for you to come through here. I'm sure they're listening to any of this, but
they could be. Again, that game. If I'm Tech, I'd be worried about it.
well, I'll send a personal message. But so Wayne State at Grand Valley. We don't necessarily know the quarterback situation with Wayne State. We kind of talked a little bit about that earlier. I'm not sure we know the same for Grand Valley, for that matter.
Correct.
Just seems like Grand Valley is going to be looking to have a get-right game, even if it's a little bit slow at first. What are your thoughts, buddy?
Well, they kind of need it, Witt, because, 2 weeks ago we were talking about how Grand Valley was averaging over 300 yards a game on the ground, and here it is 2 weeks later, and that's been cut by a sixth.
Yeah.
That means that they've had a couple of games in a row where they didn't really do very well.
Yeah.
So I think this is a get-right game for the offensive line. This is a get-right game for, guys in that backfield who just haven't been able to find the creases that they were earlier in the season. As we sit here, let's not forget, Avery Moore didn't play in the second half last week, and Aiku Dengwu played one series, and then he missed the rest of the second half. So,
Yep.
If Champ Edwards is back for Wayne, okay, good on them. But as we sit here recording this here in the middle of the week, I really genuinely don't know who's playing quarterback for Grand Valley on Saturday.
Might see maybe heavy a dose of Wildcat package.
I genuinely don't know what's going to happen with that. I have some suspicions, but those are all just me speculating things, and that's not really what the point of this show is. So, do I think Grand Valley's the better football team? Of course they are. And if Wayne doesn't have Champ Edwards, it makes them that much easier to defend. And that's one thing that Grand Valley, one side of the ball where Grand Valley is healthy is on the defense. So Wayne State's going to have a hard time moving the football in this game, regardless of how you slice it. So the Lakers are really, they put up a 60 spot against them, I think, last year. I don't know that we're going to see any of that. But, man, if they can get to 25 or 30, that ought to end up being more than enough.
Well, they got to get through this week knowing that the quarterback situation is still fluid and everything else. And, 1 week at a time with that. But now we have our main event here, Davenport, Saginaw Valley. Both teams are 6-2. They kind of get here in a little different way.
Yeah.
The numbers look better for Saginaw. Their offense looks like it's got a little more explosive, maybe. And how are you seeing this one, buddy?
Yeah, and I think we talked about this on when this was in the Super 7 here on Inside D2 Football this past Sunday. I kind of characterized Saginaw as being the more complete team, and I don't even know if that's necessarily what I meant. I think what I meant by that was Saginaw has shown a propensity in certain games to be more consistently explosive on offense and have shown the ability to put up points against teams that they should. Whereas Davenport at different points this year, they go down to Bowie State and, they got to scratch it out with 17 points, I think is all they put up there. Same thing with William Jewell. You go on the road to William Jewell and you only put up 17 or 24 points. Those are teams that you'd expect them to go out and throw 40 spots at them, and it's just that's not who Davenport has been at any point this year. In fact, their high water mark for scoring, if I remember correctly, was that 32-31 loss against Central Missouri. So, it took one of the more porous defenses in Division II for them to actually, put some real numbers out there. So, so that's where I think the problem becomes for Davenport is if for some reason they aren't able to control things up front as well as they're accustomed. And Mason McKenzie gets loose, and Eric Kraft maybe gets loose. I noticed he didn't do a whole lot yesterday, so hopefully he's going to be healthy. Terrence Moore could control things, and they spell in with Jamerson and whatever else. I just feel like, I feel like with Davenport, if you take Myron Harris away, Kendall Williams can do some stuff, but in general, if you take him away and Preston Smith isn't getting open on the outside, Davenport's going to struggle to put up points. Whereas with Saginaw Valley, McKenzie beats you with his feet real easy. Moore does really well when he's carrying the ball and doing well. I don't know. It just feels like there's more to worry about with Saginaw offensively than it is for Davenport. As soon as I say this, I mean, the thing you got to keep in mind is I don't think Saginaw's beaten Davenport.
It's been a little while.
Preseason, I think it. And of course, if I were worth my salt, I would have researched this going into.
Well, no, because Davenport's had 2 lost seasons here, a few in a row, right? And those have only been to the Big Two.
Correct. So I know 2 years ago Davenport went to Saginaw and beat them, and I'm pretty sure Davenport got them at home last year. So, because it was going into those last 2 weeks that Davenport was undefeated both those seasons. So so it's been a while since they've been able to for the Cardinals been able to get the Panthers. So
I think it's 2021.
Yeah, that might be right.
And
for as much respect as I have for Davenport's defense, which actually is, I think, a lot better than most of the rest of the country realizes.
Right.
The Saginaw's defense has just been playing so well these last few weeks. And so again, for that, just because of that lack of dimension that Davenport seems to have had at times, moving the football against that defense, again, I just feel like that's Saginaw is the favorite here.
I look at Davenport and I see a lot of areas where I would say there's somewhere if I was score this 0 to 10, where they were like a 6 or 7, 7.5, at plenty of different things. Whereas I feel Saginaw has a few areas where they might be like a 9. And that's kind of what I see as the difference here is they've got some areas where I think that they are excellent at, not just good.
Yeah.
And for me, that's going to, swaying my thoughts. I like Saginaw Valley in this game. I feel like from the Indy game until about right now, I feel like they're peaking a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest. They lose the Grand Valley game, but they play them really well. Outgain them the whole
great
deal
in that game. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then we were concerned about what would they look like this last week, and they got the ship going and took care of business.
No problemo.
So I like Saginaw to win this game. I think maybe they even win it by 10. We'll see. I'm sure if they don't, I'm sure I will end up being on some type of meme or Twitter or something to that effect. But again, we can deal with that.
I'm stuck either way just because it's like I know both Coach McEwen and Coach Brady, so one of them is going to give me a hard time at some point, I'm sure. But we kind of got to go with what our gut tells us on these things.
Well, maybe if Coach McEwen, maybe if Sparky wins this one, maybe he's our next guest on the show. Hey. I'm not trying to get ahead of ourselves, just saying.
Yeah, that would be a fine idea.
Well, as I go ahead and I got a little happy with the slides there. And for those watching, we've had some tech issues tonight with StreamYard, who kind of hosts our show. We're doing our best to get through it, and I think we haven't done too bad so far. Once again, always want to thank Flow Sports for their footage. Also want to thank, Ferris State Athletics with our guy Sandy going ahead and doing interviews for us, wink, wink, like he did. And, Grand Valley with, the footage from the presser.
Sure.
But, well, buddy, so are you heading on out to a game then this weekend?
Yeah, I probably said more about the Grand Valley Wayne State game than I should have because I'll be on the mic for that game on Flow Sports and the Grand Valley Sports Network. But
fair enough.
So but no, I'll be doing the color along with Brian Fongers for that one. So anybody wants to listen to me drone on incessantly, they're having a hard time sleeping, just want to nap on Saturday afternoon, they can tune into that.
Oh boy. Well. Another good week, buddy. I appreciate you, coming along for this voyage that we have. And Tony and I are going to figure out next week exactly which day we're going to do things. And maybe this show might drop a little bit earlier in the week. So kind of check for your local listings, as they would say.
Yes.
And we'll go ahead, and from there we'll see you guys at the games.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.